Chapter 15, Managing Incidents for the Fire Officer 1. Some of the objectives that we're going to talk about with this we're going to explain how the Incident Command System works and how it was created. We'll talk about the National Incident Management System, or NIMS, and we're going to describe post-incident reviews and that process. Also, we're going to describe the fire officer's role in incident management and discuss the strategic level incident management. As fire officers, we have to be prepared to perform the duties of the first arriving officer, be fully competent at working within the incident command system as a unit, group, or even a division leader. So where did the incident management system come from? The fire service incident management was once a local activity. Two programs provided the foundation for the NIMS, or the National Incident Management System, and this was the Fire Scope and the Fire Ground Commander, Fire Scope being from the wildland setting. Fire Scope was created in the wake of the massive Southern California wildfires. This was developed as a standardized method for setting up incident management structure, coordinating strategy and tactics, and managing all the massive resources that were needed with these large wildfires, and then disseminating the information. Fire Ground Commander program was developed in Phoenix, Arizona to meet the needs of an all-hazards metropolitan type fire department, and this focused on small and medium-sized urban type emergencies. It came time to develop one system. The first edition of the NFPA 1561 was issued in 1990. Its improved national preparedness includes the National Response Framework and the National Incident Management System. ICS is located within the NIMS Command and Management component. Local emergency response agencies are required to adopt it to remain eligible for federal disaster assistance. This is required training in the core NIMS curriculum. And this is one of the things we talked about in the budget presentation, was how certain things were required for grant and federal monies. Federal resources may deploy in advance of an incident. Incident occurs. Your local first responders are the first on scene. They then notify elected appointed official. EOC gets activated. The state EOC may be activated by the governor in larger scales. FEMA region evaluates the situation at the governor's request, and then the administrators assess the situation again at the governor's request under those recommendations. This could go up through to the president when the president declares an emergency or a major disaster, which has happened right now with COVID-19, is something during this process of making these presentations that's going on right now, and most everybody here is familiar with that. Then the response teams and other resources can deploy with a joint field office that provides a unified coordination of your response resources. NIMS, the Standard Act, was amended in 2007 to provide the federal government disaster emergency assistance. This was broke down into the different levels of training that you may be familiar with. We have taken some of these in class as well. And under the preparedness and communications, we have 800, 705, and 704. Resource management. This is your incident 700 series. You have 100, 200, 701, 702. Under the incident command, we're familiar with the 100, 200, 3 and 400, and 7 and 800. NIMS makes it easier for organizations to work together. The 5 components of preparedness, communications and information management, resource management, command and management, and ongoing management and maintenance. Post-incident reviews is a review that should be conducted after emergency operations are performed, should be viewed as potential learning experience, and the format depends on the nature and often the magnitude of the incident. Preparing information for this review. The incident commander conducts the multi-company incident review. Preparatory work is often done by one of the company officers. Information about the situation leading up to the incident should be obtained. One example I can use on a working fire, the incident commander, which is usually the battalion chief, will work with the company officer of the situation. The first in arriving company officer, I should say, will gather together all the information needed and will put together this review. Everybody that was on the scene, we will then get together at a specified time and we will go over all of the pros, cons, all of the good stuff, the bad stuff, and then let everybody have a say as to things that they saw. We call these meetings a critique. And with that, we got to know how to conduct a critique. Each company basically is going to take a turn at explaining what its members saw, what the members of that company were assigned to do, and how they accomplished their objectives. The moderator should keep the analysis directed. It is easy in these meetings to get off task. Oftentimes that happens. We don't mean to, especially when there is a negative side of something. Something on scene didn't go right. There was mistakes made, and it's very easy to get sidetracked and start pointing fingers, and that's certainly not what we want. What we want to do is to learn from those mistakes and those negative things, turn them into a positive thing for the next time that we have a similar incident. Some of the things that we look at is, did the pre-incident plan provide us with the useful and accurate information? Was it, current and up to date? Are there factors that could have or should have been addressed by fire prevention before the incident at hand? Were the appropriate units dispatched based on policy and procedure and information that was received? Were the units dispatched in a timely manner? Was the appropriate information obtained and then transmitted to the responding units? So basically we start with our dispatch, and we'll get all this information by simply listening to the recording of the call as it comes in. What was the situation upon our arrival? A lot of times as we are responding, we're listening to that first arriving company officer's report. That's how important that first on-scene report is. What was the initial strategy that was determined by the incident commander? And a lot of times that is that company officer. Was it defensive? Was it offensive? Quick attack? What were we doing? How did the strategy change during the incident? Things get better and we change it accordingly, or did things get worse and we have to change accordingly? How was the incident command structure developed, and how was it utilized? Were the resources provided adequate for the situation? What we had there that was provided, was that adequate for what was going on? How were the resources allocated and then assigned? Were standard operating procedures then followed? Do any standard operating procedures need to be changed? Oftentimes we find time and time again when things don't go appropriately, we begin to look at, is it a policy and procedure problem? When unusual circumstances were encountered, and how were they addressed? And then, is any additional training needed, and did all the support system functions effectively? So this is a pretty good list of questions that you can kind of go by to help develop your critique and conduct the meeting. And one of the big things to notice is, it's often best to focus on the positive. When we focus on the negative, that's when finger pointing and the arguments begin, and that's certainly not how we want to conduct our meetings. And as company officers, as chief officers, we want to be able to make sure that we corral those meetings and everything in the right direction. So the officer directing the critique should provide his or her assessment. If the outcome was positive, provide praise to those that it should go to. If there is room for improvement, note the valuable lessons learned. One of the big things that I've learned in the past is if everyone was okay, no injuries or worse happened, both for our firefighters and for our civilians. Yes, we did make mistakes. Now let's learn from those mistakes and those valuable lessons and move on. Sometimes it does tell us, hey, we need training. We need training in a certain area. And it is now time and our job to decide what training and how to deliver that training and to ensure that that gets delivered properly. Documentation and any follow-up. Of course, written documentation is prepared for the departmental records. A formalized run report that is written, and nowadays where we have tablets, computers, computer programs and software that allow us to basically have endless narratives and all kinds of avenues to input information. And so in today's world, there's just absolutely no excuse for not having a current, proper, and well-detailed run report. The appropriate follow-up should address training needs if there was any, and any policy change needs if there were any. So what's the fire officer's role in incident management? Every fire officer is expected to be able to function as an initial incident commander, as well as at the company level supervisor, as well as within that incident command system structure. The first arriving fire officer has the responsibility to first and foremost establish command. So once that on-scene report is given, and hopefully that's a good detailed report is given, then that officer should establish command. If they were arriving at the same time a higher officer is there, that might be the difference, or when we deviate from that policy. But when there's not a ranking officer there, they should take command and establish command. Incident command system can be it can be implemented, and it's for small incidents, for big incident. We can expand this out or collapse this down as needed. ICS allows the company officer to maintain a manageable span of control, and that's how span of control is how many subordinates under one supervisor, and we want to keep that manageable. 3 to 6 is certainly pertinent. There are situations to where one supervisor can handle more than 6 people underneath them. It does depend on the task in hand and the ability of that manager as well, but we want to try to keep that span of control manageable. Levels of command. The strategic level sets the overall direction and the overall goals. At the tactical level, this is the acts that are being done to achieve the strategic goals. And at the task level, these are the individual tasks basically to, again, achieve your tactical goals. So collective tasks, tactical individual tasks are all come together to meet our tactical needs, and ultimately we're meeting the strategic need. Strategic level of incident management, the 3 strategic priorities: life safety, as always. Number 2, incident stabilization, and then property conservation. So the life safety and rescue comes first, and then our hope is to stabilize the incident one way or the other, and then at last to conserve and save property if possible. We're also responsible for building a command structure that matches the needs of the incident. And like I said, it's pretty flexible. We can expand or contract this system to meet our needs. Translating strategic priorities into tactical objectives. We take those priorities, the strategic priorities, and then we form our tactical objectives. And that's what tells us what tasks that we need to use to complete the mission. And then we want to be able to assign our resources accordingly. So we start with establishing command. That first officer to arrive assumes command. The initial incident commander provides an initial radio report or that on-scene report and announces that command has been established. So could sound something like this. Engine 4's on scene, 235 East 2nd Street. We have a single-story residential structure. Nothing showing at this time. Engine 4 will be in investigating mode. Engine 4 now has command. Sometimes we'll also add in a radio channel that we're going to communicate on at the very end of that. But we have audibly taken command. Our options could be investigation mode, which is my example in the prior slide that I used. There may be nothing showing. It may appear to be a minor situation. Another option that we have is a fast attack mode. Immediate action is going to be necessary and required to either save a life or quickly take action to put out a fire. Command mode for a larger, complex, or more dangerous events. The company level officer's involvement in the tactical operations is less important than command, and a tactical worksheet should then be initiated. Oftentimes that initial company officer is going to be playing both roles. They're going to have to direct and command their company for some of the first initial tasks that they're going to be doing for the tactical objective, but at the same time they're going to have to maintain and hold on to command until a chief officer gets there. Under our command options, we have options of what groups and divisions and what is the first and the second alarm, how many apparatus that you're getting. Some of the tasks could be water supply, primary search, ventilation and ladders, and utilities under request, whether it be gas power, water. We may request police, light and air units, or even for a fire investigator. Functions of command. First, a determination of the strategy, and then based on that strategy, we need to select an incident tactic. The tactical objectives to get us to the end game. Setting up the action plan. Every incident has an incident action plan. A lot of times it doesn't initially get written down. It is what we are doing and what mode that we chose from the beginning, and realize that may develop as we go along, and it will push us into a developing incident command structure. We got to be able to manage resources, coordinate resource activity, and provide for on-scene safety. When do we release incident and how do we release incident information, and coordinating with other outside agencies. When it comes time for a transfer of command, the officer assuming command communicates with the initial incident on-scene commander, and then the initial incident commander briefs the new incident commander. Once this briefing takes place, the communication and the transfer of command to dispatch and then to all units. So the two of you meet up, the one that's in charge and the one that's about to be in charge. They trade information quickly with a briefing, and then a communication over the radio to the fireground and to dispatch that there has been a change of command and who it is. After that transfer, the new incident commander determines the assignment for the previous incident commander. Could be used as a group supervisor. They may remain in the command post. They may go back to the tactical group that they began with. Next, we want to talk about accountability. A minimum of 2 firefighters must enter together in an immediately dangerous to life and health type atmosphere. We've said it time and time again. Firefighters should be working in groups of 2 at least. So we work in pairs. There shouldn't be any single firefighters doing single firefighter tasks. 2 or more properly equipped and trained firefighters must be positioned outside the immediately dangerous to life and health area when we have a crew inside that type of area. We want to account for interior teams, and we want to remain capable of rescue. So we put together that 2 in and 2 out rule, which means when we have a group in, we have a group out on backup. And then we also want to put together a firefighter rescue team known as a RIC team, or a RIC crew. After the transfer of command, the incident management system can expand to handle larger and more complex incidents. So the fire officers may be given incident management system assignments. So the larger the incident, the more complex. If things were to change, remember that this system is expandable. Next, we're going to talk about our command staff. In our command staff, we have the incident commander that we've talked about, and we also have in there safety officer. This officer ensures safety issues are managed effectively at the scene level. They are appointed early in the incident, or should be appointed early in the incident, and has the authority to stop or suspend operations when unsafe situations occur. And I'll say this about the safety officer. Yes, in depending on the incident, you're going to have one or maybe two if you're sectored off into areas that you can't see. You're going to have safety officers appointed, but remember, safety can be a concern of any firefighter. If they're seeing something the safety officer has not yet seen, they can also stop unsafe acts. This person should be qualified and knowledgeable in some areas, in one being fire behavior, building construction and collapse potential, firefighter strategy and tactics, hazardous materials and technical rescue practices, and departmental safety rules and regulations. So it certainly seems that the person that you want to pick to be the safety officer is obviously not the recruit, and maybe not even the seasoned firefighter, but probably at least at officer level if we can, maybe even a chief level. In the command staff, we also have a liaison officer, a point of contact for representatives from outside agencies, and able to make exchanges of information with those representatives. Next is public information officer. This is someone who gathers and releases incident information to the news media and other appropriate agencies. This is also somebody that you want informed, competent, usually well-spoken, and knows how to handle the news media and is able to communicate well with those folks, and understands, yes, what can be released and no, what cannot be released. General staff functions. When an incident is too large for one person to manage, the incident commander may appoint officers to oversee 4 major elements or components. One is operations, next is planning, then logistics, and then finance and administration. Under your operations section, you may be broke down into branches and then divisions and groups, strike teams, task force, and single resource. A lot of times we don't get into strike teams and task force unless it's a very large incident. Wildland incidents do get into that on a regular basis. A lot of times we're going down to all the way down to single resources. The planning section may have a resources unit, a demob unit, a situation unit, and documentation unit. Under logistics, for example, we may have a support and a service branch. Under service, you may have communications, medical, and food units. Under your support branches, you may have supplies, facilities, and ground support. Ground and supplies. Finance and administration, it sounds funny to have that in your general staff functions. However, money makes things happen. They're going to keep track of time. They're going to keep track of not only time on the incident, but personnel's time spent in the way of time, work time, compensation claims, the overall cost of things, and the procurement side of things. Again, your operations section manages all actions that are directly related to controlling the incident. Separate operations section chief is used in the complex incidents. The planning section is used to collect, evaluate, disseminate, and uses information relevant to the incident. Develops and updates the incident action plan. Again, initially this plan is put into motion. It's not initially written down, but at some point the documentation begins to occur and things change, and all of this needs to be written down. Functions may be delegated to subunits as well. The Incident Action Plan, or IAP, is required for all incidents. Again, like I said, initially it may not get written down. It's in the heads of the incident commanders and the initial operations officers, but basically this outlines the strategic objectives, and it's going to state how emergency operations will be conducted. Logistics section. This provides supplies, it provides services, facilities, and materials during the incident, and it may use subunits to provide other support for the large incident. And again, finance and administrative section is responsible ultimately for administrative, accounting, and financial aspects, responsible for legal issues, usually established during large-scale incidents such as natural disasters and hazardous material incidents. Location designators. On buildings, we use the exterior sides of the building in the form of A, B, C, and D. And this usually, the street side or the address side is A, and we go clockwise B, C, and D around the structure. Exposures are areas adjacent to a burning building, and they take the same letter as whatever adjacent side of the building that they fall on. Divisions take the number of floors on which they are working. Especially in high-rise and multi-story buildings, you could be on Division 1 as the first floor, Division 2 as the second floor, Division 6 as the sixth floor. So we've talked about what is expected as a fire officer to perform the duties of the first arriving officer, that first arriving scene point, that scene survey, and the incident management system, where that came from both Fire Scope and the Fire Ground Commander programs, Phoenix Fire and our wildland firefighting. First arriving fire officers have the responsibility to, one, establish command and then manage the incident until they're relieved. There's 3 levels of the command in the incident command system. That's strategic, tactical, and the task level. This all, the single tasks form the collective tasks that take care of the strategic objectives. The incident command system must be used at every event. And I'll say that even the smallest event, if you use it on every event, you're not going to forget to establish command. First arriving company officer has 3 options: investigative mode, fast attack mode, or command mode. There are 9 functions of command that we've talked about. Remember that the incident management system can expand as necessary on your large incidents. Your command staff report directly to the incident commander. Everything that occurs at an emergency incident can be divided among operations, planning, logistics, and finance and admin. Exterior sides of the building labeled A, B, C, D. Accordingly, the street side being A, again counterclockwise B, C, and D. The areas adjacent to the burning building are those exposures, and they're labeled accordingly to what side they're adjacent to, A, B, C, and D. Some form of review should be conducted after your emergency operations, your incident critique or your review, and outlining those either critical area or even those good things, not just the errors, but the good things that happen, and let people know that they did a good thing. I try to put the praises in there first and then steer off into what is negative, but try to make that negative a positive in how can we do things better.